for the end of this kickoff call, I really want to inspire all of you guys to really just go for it, right? At the end of the day, to go for it, to take the exam this year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share at least 3 strategies, right? 3 strategies to help you prepare without all the overwhelm, right? So that's the most important part of this kickoff call, is to just really inspire you, to really instill in the belief that it is possible. I think a lot of times people have been talking through the years like, oh, it's so hard. And I'm not discounting that it's not hard, but it's extremely doable. I think people just say it's hard to say it's hard. But it's extremely doable. And if you keep telling yourself the story of that it's hard, it's really hard to kind of get over that hump, because that, like, constantly people are telling you stuff to kind of keep you in that overwhelm. But I'm here tonight and I want to tell you that at least 3 strategies to help you prepare to take that overwhelm out, right? That's the whole point of this program. And Vanessa's here. She's been through the program. She's a CHT too, and she's also someone who does some calls throughout the program as well. So if you stay until the end of the call, I'm going to get through the bonuses that we're going to be offering. So one call is not going to help you pass. One call is not going to help you pass, but however, when you stick with a plan, you can really accomplish anything, right? You can really accomplish anything. It's so much about sticking with the plan and having a detailed plan so that you can get through the materials, so that you can feel really good and have confidence in terms of knowing where to go, what to study, what are the key important aspects of the exam. So my name is Huang. So if you guys don't know, my name is Huang. I am a clinic owner as well. What you see behind me is I'm actually talking and teaching in my clinic. And one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing with Hand Therapy Secrets is really to help more and more therapists become specialized in hands. Like Joel, you'll know, like, it's hard to hire therapists that have experience or want to have experience or want to continue to learn. And so a lot of times they'll say it's really, really hard to get that job. And let me tell you, I've been doing interviews for my own clinic. And I mean, for the last several years, I've been in business for over 7 years now for my own clinic. And every time I want to hire and get more OTs in the clinic and build the caseload and stuff like that, I run into the realm of, oh, like, hand therapy jobs are really hard, but they are out there. I have so many people looking to hire. They are just looking for that skilled therapist, and when you study to become a certified hand therapist, you're literally telling people that you have the experience, that you have the expertise to really critically think through, problem solve, and make decisions on different types of cases that come your way, where you can help people, get out of their pain, get moving more and stuff like that, right? So one of the things that I do for my own clinic is I'm always trying to hire, and I'm always trying to help more and more therapists in my own community. So why not help even more and more therapists all over the world, essentially, become specialized in the art of hand therapy. So that's who I am. That's what I'm doing. And we have people in this program from all over the United States, right? So we have East Coast, we have New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, all the way down across the board. We have people in Washington, Oregon, tons of people, like I said, in California. Actually, we have like a ton just signed up was it last week? Just over the weekend. And then we've had people from Alaska, Hawaii, Canada. Right now, currently, we have someone from Ireland. We're talking to people in different parts of Africa that are interested. So definitely there's a need for specialty, and becoming a certified hand specialist will let people know that you are the expert when it comes to hand and arm injuries, right? So imagine November comes around, you wanted to do this exam and you don't really feel good about your studying, or you keep putting this off, like, oh, maybe in May, maybe next year. You never know the different opportunities that are gonna come around your way when you yourself become a certified hand therapist. Like, imagine how confident you'll feel that you just did it. You wanted to take this exam, you've been thinking about it, you got all the books, and now you did it. Like, how confident would you feel just having met that goal? Imagine even the fact that you took the exam, and then what happens? What if you pass? Imagine that, right? Imagine that. And I know if you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, you definitely can use the CHT certifications to get very particular types of cases that is very, not only rewarding career-wise, but monetarily, it's you can demand higher prices and stuff like that, especially if you do workers' comp. Joel, like, I do workers' comp. And there are different types of cases that you can get. Not only will you get the more complex cases, but the different types of cases will bring different types of revenue into your clinic. And if you work with someone or work for someone, you can also use that, to say these are the type of cases I want to market towards and get those types of cases in your clinic. And I'm not saying it just from like a surgical case standpoint. You can definitely see, we always talk about, when I chunk things up, I talk about surgical cases and talk about non-surgical cases, right? They're both really important because, I get so many non-surgical cases where patients are just like having nerve types of issues, having thoracic outlets types of syndromes, and outside of it coming from a neck or shoulder problem, they might just have really isolated hand issues. But it's really important to kind of dive into that and know, okay, what can I do and how can I speak in a way that really lets them know that I'm the specialist, right? So sometimes it's not just about talking, but sometimes it's about having that credential to say, yes, I'm a certified hand therapist, I'm a specialist. So, I definitely encourage you, to, make the plans to become a CHT this year, right? So the one thing I want you to get out of it tonight is how to prepare for the CHT exam without all the overwhelm, right? So if, who's heard, that's hard. Who's heard that it's hard? Everyone who has thought about taking a CHT, everyone that I speak to always talks to me and tell me about like how hard they hear that it is. Well, what can we do to make it easier, right? So this is exactly what I've thought about and who I think about all the time. When people tell me, oh, I'm too old, right? You're never too old. I've got people, no matter the age range, I tell you, I'm in my 40s, I got people in their 50s and 60s even, that just say like, I want to become a certified hand therapist. It's been a dream of mine. I want to not just check it off, but I want the last, whatever career experience I have, if I want to keep working, I want to be able to work at that expert level, right? So no matter your age, sometimes people tell me, oh, I'm too old, I can't study and remember things the way I used to. Well, you don't have to. Did you know that research has shown that when you're young, you study in one way, which is really just about memorization, right? When you're older, you study about concepts. You study to understand concepts, and you actually have an ability to understand concepts. So that's where I kind of tend to focus, right? I tend to focus around concepts to take that overwhelm out, to make it not hard. I focus on concepts. If you think it's too hard because you don't have the work experience, that's okay too. Sometimes people say, I've worked with this type of patient population. I haven't had a lot of surgery cases, right? Well, I can tell you right now that I've worked with members and students in the past who work with all surgery cases, but guess what their disadvantage is? Because they're always surgical, they never have to problem solve. They're always told exactly what to do. So it makes it hard for them to think, oh, what do I need to do? So it's that shift in thinking, it's that shift in focus that we want to help prepare you for, So just say it with me. I want what I want because I want it. I want to become a certified hand therapist because I want to become a certified hand therapist. You don't need any other reason besides that. And you just want to say, what do I need to do to literally just get there? You can cut your time in half essentially, so you don't have to sit there and read so much. And if you are feeling overwhelmed about preparing for the CHT because, well, you just simply not sure about how much time you have, is it kids, is it work, is it, family life? You have the time when you make the time, right? You have the time when you make the time. So use these 3 strategies I'm going to talk about, take the overwhelm out of studying for the CHT and stop the procrastination. You can stop the procrastination when we dive into the 3 strategies I'm going to talk about. You guys ready? I was talking to a student today. We were on a private call, and I was telling her the importance of pen to paper. Pen to paper connects your hand to your brain, and there's so much research out there as it pertains to your memory when you put pen to paper, right? So here are some of the strategies that I'm going to go over, and I'm going to go over how I do it as well. So when we talk about strategy, I was just reading something yesterday I don't know if you guys know Atomic Habits by, I think, James Cleary. He talks a lot about habits and stuff, and he said that when you are, let me see if I wrote it down. If you're a novice, I kind of want to say it the way he said it. Of course, I'm not going to remember. But he said that see if I have it. Let's see where I wrote it. Oh, God knows where. But basically, if you're a beginner, right? If you're a beginner, you're just doing, right? If you're a beginner, you're starting out in your hand there, you know, you're starting out in your PT world, starting out in your OT world, you just need to do. You know, people need to just do treatments just to get some experience, just to get hands-on practice. When you're intermediate, you need strategy. When you're intermediate, you need strategy. When you're an expert, it's all about mindset, right? So we're going from here to here, right? Intermediate to strategy. So the strategy here is to kind of help you to level up to mindset. And that mindset really is to let you know that you can be the critical thinker of any case that comes your way, right? Any case, any questions. And that's usually how I like to talk about it. Any case, any questions. If you sit there and you just trying to memorize and memorize and memorize, you're gonna get stumped on questions, because the CHT board has a pool of questions and they can pull from anywhere. And I can tell you that a lot of OTs maybe don't have shoulder experience, right? So they kind of get stuck in the shoulder stuff. And then what's funny is the PTs don't get a ton of hand stuff and splinting stuff. So that's where they sort of, you know, kind of start to lose what they are able to answer and stuff like that, right? So critical thinker, problem solver, and decision maker, right? So you're moving this where we're at. We're getting the strategy. So the strategy to start with is really about a detailed schedule. The reason why studying for the exam is so overwhelming, right, is because you have tons and tons of things that you feel like you need to read. I mean, the 2 volumes, I normally teach out of Rehab of the Hand. I teach out of Rehab of the Hand, and one of the things I do is I go through those chapters and I chunk the information down for you. One of the resources in the program is all about, you know, chunking that information up into hands, wrists, tendons, right? But after that, you need a detailed schedule of what you're going to be focused on, right? So you don't want to sit there and spend like way too much time on hands, and then you're like, holy crap, I don't have enough time to go to nerves, because there's always tons of questions on nerves, right? So the first strategy is really to get a detailed schedule, and what you want to do is you want to chunk out your time. So let's say, for example, you're chunking out 2 hours. I was just talking to one of my students this morning, and I was like, you can have a general schedule of like, oh, I'm gonna study hands this week. So let's say, for example, this month in the hand exam, in the hand mentorship program, we've been talking about shoulders, right? We've been talking about shoulders, but if you're not chunking out that time to say, okay, I'm gonna spend 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon to really dive into shoulders, right? You're gonna just be lost. And then the overwhelm of like everything that you have to do is going to hit you really hard, and then you're just gonna be like, oh, I don't have time, this is too hard, I have tons of reading. No, let's stay focused. Let's get a detailed schedule out, so you can actually get your phone out, put it on your calendar, and chunk out. This is, you know, what I'm going to be doing, right? So normally I'll do a piece of paper, and I'll just have them write out their schedule. What does their week need to look like for the first week and the second week? In terms of this, realistically, this is what I'm gonna study, and this is when I'm going to study. So focus on when you're going to study first. When. Schedule that out, write it out, and then put it to calendar. Anytime you schedule something, it will get done, right? La la la, you know, if you're not really sure when you're gonna do it, like, I'll do it later, it never gets done, right? But if it's scheduled, if you're going for your mani-pedi, you're getting your hair colored, that one's always scheduled. It says standing appointment 2 hours later. 3 if you're getting your hair colored, right? But so detailed schedule is really, really key when you're studying. What's written and blocked out gets done. So write it out, chunk it out, right? And it's gonna really hold you accountable and focused. And we do a lot of that accountability and focus too. So number 2 is know the topic that you're studying. know the topic that you are studying. So I did this with another student. So I said, grab a piece of paper again. We're going from August to November in the program. I don't know if you can see this. We're doing 2 weeks of hands, 2 weeks of wrists, 2 weeks of tendons. We're doing 1 week of burns and wounds, 1 week of elbows, 2 weeks of shoulders, and 2 weeks of nerves. And then of course you have your miscellaneous topics, right? Which we have videos of that are in the extra section. Now, that is for August to November. In order for you to go all through that information, you're gonna have to go through a certain amount of topics already right now, which is really one of the real reasons why I opened up enrollment and I talk so much about the extended version, because a lot of times people are like, oh, maybe I'll wait, I'm gonna do it myself. And what happens is it's not scheduled, it's not blocked, and there's no commitment, so they don't do it. And by the time they come in August to me and they're like, oh my God, I really want to take the exam in November, but I haven't really been studying, right? So I just don't want it to happen to you where you think you're gonna do it, but since you don't have, you're lacking that accountability, you're lacking that accountability where you're really gonna show up weekly, in order to learn the topics that you need to learn. So if you wanna, this is a general calendar, this is a general schedule, and we're gonna get more detailed. So in May through July, what do we need to do to get through some of these topics, right? So we're on our last week of shoulder. So everyone who's coming in the program right now, between the last week or so, they are binging shoulder content. They are binging shoulder content. They go into the shoulder showcase. We have like 25 videos, and they're just watching it, taking notes, and then we have replay calls from this month's call, right? So know the topic that you're studying so that you can go one after the next, right? And often people ask me, well, how many hours do I need to devote to studying for this? It depends on your learning style. So I've got people who feel the need to read, right? They feel the need to read. And I'm all for that because I'm kind of like that too. Like I feel the need to read. Why do you think? I read all the chapters and I chunk up the information for you, And then some people are like, I don't like to read. I want you to teach me, Huang. I want you to, they want the videos. They want the live teaching weekly. They want the on-demand videos where I go over certain aspects of the information, but I'm kind of taking all the words and I'm essentially like cliff notes of hand therapy rehab of the handbook, right? So knowing the topic that you're studying. So this month we're studying shoulders, right? And then I'm moving everyone into nerves, right? So next week, is it next week? Yeah, next week we're gonna start really going into nerves. So I want everyone watching nerves, and then we're gonna go over some like nerve compressions and things that we didn't have a chance to go into during the 12-week, because when we cover nerves, we cover like tendon transfers and like severe cases. So, but you're gonna have compression types of questions as well. So we're gonna go into nerves, and so I really help to keep everyone focused. Like, what are you gonna be doing? So let's say you scheduled your calendar out, you chunked up your time, you schedule it. What I normally recommend is 2 weeks. See what you actually stick to. Because you want to be realistic with yourself, right? You want to be realistic so that you can be motivated, so you can actually hit your goals, right? When you're unrealistic and then you don't meet your goals, it makes you feel really bad about yourself, and then you start to lose the motivation, you start to get more overwhelmed. Well, I'm here to tell you that part of the program is to help take that overwhelm away. Let's prepare for the CHT without all that overwhelm. And so when we get that schedule, we get realistic, what worked, what didn't work. So ask yourself that question, what worked, what didn't work? Because that's where I want to make those changes, right? And then that way we can keep changing them so you're more effective with the studying that you're doing. There is nothing worse than sitting there and reading, I want to put that in quotes, reading, because I've been there, done that, reading after 2 hours, 3 hours, and then be like, I don't remember or get anything that I've read. So definitely the detailed schedule, know the topic that you're studying, right? So we're gonna map that out for you. And then before you finish, so here's the key thing, before you finish studying your session, you want to review. Not only will this help you to remember certain concept? It's just going to solidify it for you so that you will feel more effective with the time that you spent. So before you finish, review it for literally 5 to 10 minutes. Don't spend more than that. Just literally, you're running your eyes over it, you're running your brain over it, and that way you can remember exactly where you're at. All right? Now the fourth, I said 3, right? But really the fourth strategy is you want to bookmark it. You want to bookmark yourself in terms of, how you're reading a book and you put a bookmark or you tab yourself down so you know exactly what page you're on, where you're starting back in that story. So must you do when you're studying, right? It's going to help you keep more focused, and you're going to be able to go through the information a lot faster. There's nothing worse than like, okay, I'm carved out 4 hours, I'm going to study now, and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let me see what I'm going to do today. And I've done that. I've done that for work. I've done that with studying. But what happens is you find out like 30 minutes you were playing on Facebook, right? Or Instagram, and maybe watched a YouTube video, I don't know. And then 30 minutes later, you're like, oh, let me flip through some chapters. Our brain is always ready to do the things that we like the most, that we think is the easiest, right? But then that's where you get stuck. That's where you lose your focus, because you spend too much time on the thing that you really liked and not enough time on the thing that you need to focus on. When I took the CHT exam, like a million years ago, okay, 15 years ago, I think I have to renew this year. Risk was so hard for me back then. And so I would just sit there and be like, oh, not today. I'll review that later. Let me go over here and study elbows or something. But here, this is where you this is where you're going to keep your focus. Keep your focus. You'll be able to prepare for that CHT without all the overwhelm. Bookmark yourself. Since you reviewed it, you're going to be like, okay, so here I am, and this is where I'm going to pick up next. So I was speaking to one of the members. I said, after this call, you're gonna study. You can study for 2 hours, right? So if one of the videos is 2 hours long, because she's gonna catch up on some old replay videos, because she's moving on to nerves, right? I said, if you only have an hour, bookmark yourself, write a little note that says, where you stopped on which video, and then that way, whatever notes, you can come back to it, finish out that video, what's the next one that you're gonna do, right? Because we need to go over nerves. We need to go over from the neck to the brachial plexus, all the way down to all the nerves, right? So that's the kind of focus that that you want, essentially, so that you can take the overwhelm out and just like finish all of this studying down, right? So if I go over into anatomy, right, and this is one of the ways that I will go over anatomy and how to really break it down. So let's talk about shoulders. Right, since we just finished, or we're about to finish shoulders this week, we have a call on Thursday, and we're going to go over labrum and all the testing that is related to shoulders. One of the things that I always like to do is, instead of sitting there and reading some of the most boring chapters, the first 5 chapters, I always joke, yes, you want to start somewhere. You start with chapter 1, right? Which is anatomy and kinematics, but man, that stuff is really dry. It's so dry. And one of the things I do is I chunk up that information so that you can actually bypass those chapters. But we want to break it up into shoulders. I want to go into anterior muscles, rotator cuff muscles, and then posterior muscles, right? And then one of the things I like to do is I like to list out the muscles. So if I take the muscles and I break down anterior, posterior, and rotator cuff. So most of us already know rotator cuff is your supraspinatus, your infraspinatus, your subscap, and your teres minor, right? It's important not just to know the muscles. We don't need to get super detailed with origin insertion. What is most important when you're reading the chapters is to know, okay, if it originates here and it ends here, then what happens when something goes wrong, right? How does this muscle affect when something goes wrong, right? So we know for the most part our rotator cuffs are these muscles, and these are our dynamic stabilizers, right? If something goes wrong with these 4 muscles, we lose some stability. And the shoulder's already lacking a certain amount of stability, right? So then our anterior muscles, we have our pecs, we have our pec minor, right? We have our coracobrachialis, I'm just gonna shorten it there. We have our biceps, we have our deltoids, and even with the deltoids, we have 1, 2, and 3, right? And then when it comes to our posterior muscles, we have our traps, and we have 3 parts of that too. We have our triceps, we have our rhomboids, we have our levator scapulae, we have our teres major, we have our lats, and then we have our serratus anterior, right? So let's say you're studying all of the shoulders. One of the things I like to do is I like to chunk that information up and really talk about not just what happens normally, but then what happens abnormally. So which muscles are the culprit? Like where are your problem child? Where are your problem childs? So yes, any of these muscles can be broken, but isn't this one of the most common ones? Right? When it comes to shoulders, we have to know about the dynamics of like how the scapula moves. Who's our problem child here? We know that a lot of times it could be the serratus anterior, right? We know that it could be a lot of times the traps. And then in the anterior, we know that sometimes the pecs minor can give us problems, and believe it or not, the biceps too. And the deltoids, so many problem child, but it's really important when you're studying to really focus in on what do you need to know as a certified hand therapist. So write that question down. What do I need to know as a certified hand therapist? Because it's not that you need to know everything. So that's where the overwhelm is, like, oh my God, I need to know everything. You need to know a certain percentage so that you can rule in and rule out questions on the exam. You need to be able to rule in and rule out questions on the exam and pick the best answer, right? And everything really, for the most part, comes out of rehab of the hand. And that's literally, essentially where I teach from, right? So if we break down shoulders, then we can go into elbows, right? So we're gonna tie it all together in a way in terms of anatomy. So if you take a look at your elbow, you have your biceps, you have your brachii, you have your radiobrachialis, you have your triceps, right? So these are your proximal elbow muscles, right? So some of them, like here, the biceps actually crosses, the biceps and the triceps, they essentially cross the shoulder and goes to the elbow. It affects the elbow. So like, yeah, we need to know muscles, we need to know ligaments, we need to know bone, or like, we already know the bones, but we need to know what happens to them, right? What happens to when they break, when they dislocate and stuff like that. So really important to know which muscles too, cross where and who are the problem child, right? So then we can go into wrists. So here are our wrist extensors. You have your ECRB, your ECRL, and your ECU, right? Then you have your wrist flexors, your FCU, your FCR, your palmaris longus, and so forth, right? So once you break down the wrist extensors, then you can go into hands. And one of the things, I have this one really powerful video where it really dives into the anatomy of it and breaks the information down. So you can really think through extrinsic muscles, right? And intrinsic muscles. Where are the problems? So everything about this program, the hand exam prep program, is really about how can we, prepare for the CHT without all that overwhelm. And I've got tons and tons of videos. I actually want to share with you guys what it looks like on the inside right now, because we just had a complete facelift and we're really trying to bring in, make it an easier way for you to be able to watch the videos, to be able to search. There's a search function on there now. But when you're studying, essentially you want to break things up, right? But you definitely want to schedule out that time, right? Schedule out that time so that you can really get focused, right? Get that topic that you're about to study, right? Go over, you want to have that foundational knowledge, right? This is foundational knowledge, tying it all together so you can think through any kind of case. So what happens if something goes wrong? You know what is normal, so you can know what happens when something abnormal happens, so you can predict essentially what could happen or where the problems or complications are going to be. Because as a certified hand therapist, as a specialist, as an expert, I need to know and be able to predict those type of problems and be able to head them off, right? Or be able to help that patient. So those are types of questions. It's not just rote memorization. I mean, some people get through like that, but for the most part, the questions can be challenging. It's gonna make you think through all the different concepts, and that's essentially what we want to help you to do and to prepare for in the program, so that we can take that overwhelm away. So you can cut the time in half, right? So you don't have to constantly be reading, because you can watch some videos, take some notes, and then I call it where you go back into the videos and speed read through, right? You're just looking for what you know already because you've already watched those videos, right? You're gonna have time now, right? What was one of the barriers to preparing for the CHT? I have no time, I'm too busy, I have kids. Believe it or not, when you involve those people and you say, okay, this is the time I need to prepare, you'll have it. You'll get it because you'll schedule it, Is it hard? It's totally doable. This is totally doable. Stop listening to those stories of everyone telling you it's hard. It's totally doable because there's thousands of CHTs, and I need you to be one of them. So I'm excited for everyone who's ready to sign up and start preparing now. So yeah, Joel, let's switch you out and let's get you studying for the CHT and get more money for your clinic. Be like, yep, a CHT right here.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't hire somebody because I became one. I love that.
So actually, I'm more motivated now because another physical therapist opened a clinic in the same building, right down the hall from my clinic.
Girl, Joel, I have a physical therapist next door. Ask Vanessa, literally next door to me.
Really?
Is a physical therapy center. I don't know what they do, but they're there, and every once in a while we get their patients knocking on our door. Come on in, you got a hand and arm problem? So when people tell me I don't have time or I can't do this with my kids, I promise you this program was put together with all of that in mind, to make it easy, to chunk it up, and really to cut the overwhelm. If I could cut your overwhelm down by a minimum of 50% and really cut the time that you have to study, I mean, that is my goal, so you don't have to sit there and read these chapters. I've done the reading for you. All right, so I'll send you the link. If anyone has any other questions, please feel free to just send me an email. I'm happy to get on a strategy call with you that is private, so we can just say like where I am and what I'm doing and what I need help with, so that way I can make sure the program is like best suited for you, but how I can best help you as well. And I encourage anyone who's taken the exam and has failed, get on a call with me, because one of the things I do is I go over the gap. So we go over the gap, and then we make sure we make gains. The gap in the gains, right? The gap in the gains is really huge. Can't do the same thing over and over, right? So we've got to make some key strategic changes so that you can get what you want. I want what I want because I want it. I want to become a CHT because I want to become a CHT, period.